And welcome on in to the next NHL season preview show. And today we're going to be talking all about the LA Kings, looking at their 2023-2024 season preview. On my left is Mossy, on my right is Ian. Make sure to give both of them a follow on Twitter. Their Twitter links are in the description below and then are also on the screen. And we'll jump right into it. LA had a pretty big offseason when you take a look at it. Some guys in, some guys out. Right off the bat, the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, I get going and getting a center, but I don't like that trade. I don't like all that they gave up. The three guys they gave up, I think they gave up too much. I know they've got a lot of depth when it comes to prospects, but I really like the trade on Winnipeg side. Um, when you look at what the Kings did to try to improve in goal, they added David Riddick and Cam Talbot. I think that is not really an improvement at all over Jonas Corpusalo. Peterson, maybe. He kind of fits the bill there. But David Riddick and Cam Talbot's not going to get the job done. On the addition side, the subtraction side, a lot of younger guys, a lot of guys with potential, but overall, I'm not too impressed on this offseason. And to the Kings fans that'll get mad at me in the YouTube comments, we're not here to um, give a whole bunch of love to a team. We're here to talk about what the team did and our thoughts and opinions. Sometimes they're going to be positive ones, and sometimes there'll be negative ones. And I just don't like the Kings off season. So that's just my opinion. Ian, we'll go to you second this time. What is your opinion on the off season for the LA Kings?
Yeah, it's pretty much some good, some bad for me with the LA Kings. The good is obviously Pierre-Luc Dubois. Say what you will, he didn't always bring it every night in Winnipeg. I think he was kind of fed up with the situation there. I think I think you're gonna get the most out of him here. I really do, because I think he's gonna be comfortable being in LA. It's not as much of media attention, and he's gonna be around a team that's got a legit chance to contend and win a Stanley Cup. And I think that's gonna get the best out of PLD. The Kings are going to hope for that. I think there's a good chance of that. And there's no denying whatsoever that acquiring Dubois has given the Kings maybe the deepest center ice position in the NHL. I mean, what they've got down the middle is absolutely tremendous. I mean, Kopitar, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Philip Deneau, and you're probably looking at Blake Lizotte, as their four centers starting this season. And that is very, very impressive as far as depth goes down the middle. And that's a good place to start as far as having a great team and a contending team, is being strong and having that depth at the center ice spot. And the Kings certainly have that in droves. I still like their forward group. I don't know if they can match, a couple of these teams in the Pacific Division and in the West from that standpoint. Kempe is going to be terrific. Of course, a 41-goal season last year for him. Fiala with better health this upcoming season, playing likely with Dubois, is going to be something that'll be very fun to watch. Victor Arvidsson too, like when healthy, he's a very big offensive catalyst and can be for this LA Kings team. I think Trevor Moore continues to grow and get better for this group. So interesting what we're going to see there from them. When you look at bringing in Connaughton, he's kind of a defenseman at this point in his career, and I don't know if he's going to make. And Hayden Hodgson, it's funny, he's in the additions after the stir he caused last night in that preseason game against Vegas. Mark Stone, none too happy with. Apparently he can't hit anybody clean anymore here in the National Hockey League, according to Mark Stone. But they got him in a trade. You're right about the goaltending. It's the biggest concern on this team. And I know they had David Riddick, and we know we've joked and given him the moniker Big Siv, Dave, over the years, and rightfully so. He hasn't been trustworthy. Cam Talbot, a guy that's sometimes good, sometimes not good, then he gets hurt. It's all over the map for Cam Talbot. What's he going to be able to deliver? I do like them getting Trevor Lewis back. Trevor Lewis is not a fast skater. His foot speed is a concern, but he's a very, very smart, crafty veteran defensive forward that's won a Stanley Cup. So I really don't mind the Kings bringing Trevor Lewis back in the fold. Of course, Lewis was part of those great Kings teams with Sutter and Doughty, Kopitar, Dustin Brown, all those great Kings teams, Jonathan Quick, that won the Cups last decade. As far as who they lose, they're going to miss Sean Durzi. It's a nice addition there to the Arizona Coyotes. And certainly, if you're going to get Pierre-Luc Dubois, you got to part with someone good. And they had to part with three pretty good players that could still be very good at the NHL level in their new home in Winnipeg. Velarde, who I absolutely thought was terrific last year, breakout year. We cashed a lot of props with him. Iafallo, good at both ends. Rasmus Kumpari, I think, could still be really, really impressive. Give him time. I think he can continue to develop. Korpisalo, the way I look at it is you bring in Talbot, big fat question mark. David Riddick doesn't do anything for me, but you lose Jonas Korpisalo, who I'll take any day over those two guys. So you're right. Goaltending is the big question, and the offseason activity didn't do much to dispel those questions.
Yeah, 100%. Mossy, addition and subtractions for the Kings. What do you think here?
Yeah, you guys said it pretty good. PLD being the biggest one coming in, you had to lose some key pieces there: Velarde, Iafallo, Kupari. It's funny that the three-headed monster down the middle is going to cause matchup problems with teams. So I feel, they might get the benefit of the doubt there. PLD get a full season in would be nice. Korpisalo, the goaltending is the biggest problem. I think Korpisalo, they would have probably liked to have him stay, but they couldn't afford it if they wanted to. I think they got like 120,000. So I mean, they bring in Cam Talbot, veteran, big defenseman or big goaltender rather. In exchange, is it going to be serviceable? I think there will be points in the time, maybe come Christmas, where Cam Talbot maybe takes the starter over Copley. I think they got Copley marked in right now as the starter, but I can see Talbot maybe taking that. Is it enough what they brought in? Trevor Lewis, fourth line, can play center, will play wing. I think he had how many points last year? 20 20 points, 9 goals, 11 assists, played full 82 games. It'll probably be his retirement year. Won the cup with LA. It's sort of like a kind of a bad example, but sort of like a Lucic coming in back there, like you said, slow foot speed, but you know what you get with him. Veteran in the league. Yeah, I don't know necessarily if their additions are going to outweigh their subtractions, but yeah, it's going to come down to PLD if he can. I'd like to see him have a great season and maybe have better numbers than Velarde and Iafallo and Kupari say last year would be the big thing for me.
Awesome. We'll go to the second segment, which is upcoming free agents, to look at what the Kings have to look at here in the offseason. Defenseman Matt Roy, I could see re-signing, or I could see him going elsewhere. The goaltenders, Phoenix Copley and Cam Talbot. So number one and number two goaltenders are UFAs after the season. I can't. I think LA needs to make an addition there. So I wouldn't be surprised if one, or probably not both of those guys, but won't be surprised if one of those guys are traded by the deadline to get somebody else to improve the goaltending. So I don't see both of those guys being re-signed for next year in LA. That would really surprise me. Looking at the forward group, that's where LA has business here to attend to in the offseason. The two guys' pictures I have there, Victor Arvidsson, I think he's important to re-sign for the next upcoming years. Quinton Byfield, also really important to resign. Arthur Kaliev and Blake Lizotte, also RFAs. Grunstrom, Aronson Dolan as well. You want to re-sign your RFAs. The Kings have already, obviously, in the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, gotten rid of 3 young forwards. So I would be focused on obviously just re-signing the RFAs, especially Quinton Byfield, and I would try to re-sign Victor Arvidsson or potentially trade him by the deadline. Would be my main objectives here for the Kings. Mossy, what do you think here? Upcoming free agents, what should the Kings be focusing in?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you said, both their 1 and 2 goalies are going to be UFAs coming up. I have a feeling too. Kings, if they're going to be in a playoff contention at least, they might make a move by Christmas with one of those guys. See what happens. Bring maybe another goalie in that's maybe a little more serviceable. Matt Roy, that's another one. Maybe stay, maybe don't. I'm not really emotionally tied with him. It doesn't move me either way, whether he stays or if he doesn't. It's like you said, the RFAs, Byfield, Kaliev. I think they want to focus on getting those guys signed. Two young guys that in some years to come will probably be the core of this team. You get those guys signed, like you said, Lazat, Arvidsson, if you can make room. But I mean, it all depends, right? They don't have much cap space. The cap's going up, but we'll see what they can manage to do there. Anderson Dolan, I mean, again, not really here or there with him. Played 46 games, 12 points as a centerman, kind of a depth guy there. I'm not really too emotionally attached. Yeah, you want to get those Byfield, Kaliev, Lazat, Arvidsson, if you can, get those guys signed up.
For sure. Ian, if you were GM of the Kings, who would you be focusing in on re-signing here in the offseason?
Yeah, it's Matt Roy is going to be something to watch here because he's actually very steady in his own end. He's not going to give you any points and not a lot of offensive flash from the back end, but you don't really need that when you've got Doughty can provide that. Brant Clark, I think, is going to make this team, so he's going to be someone that's definitely, I believe, going to provide that even at 20 years old. The Kings seem to think he's NHL ready. So, but again, Roy's pretty steady in his own end. So, but a lot of those defensemen, unless he has a tremendous, incredible season, and he's certainly motivated to do that in a contract year. But they might just maybe look elsewhere because you do have to pay attention to Byfield's RFA status, Kaliev's RFA status, even guys like Jared Anderson, Dolan, Carl Grundstrom. You definitely want to, and those are younger guys that you still think can develop through this organization in years. So they might be more of a priority, come the off season next year compared to Matt Roy. And same thing goes with Arvidsson. Arvidsson in a perfect world stays healthy this year, gives you 30 goals. You'd love to have it back, but injuries have been mounting for this guy the last couple of years, even going back to his end of his tenure in Nashville. That's something that would concern me about a long-term contract extension with a guy like Victor Arvidsson moving forward. There's a very good possibility Lewis is just for a 1 year and done type of deal. He might even retire, I think, at the end of this season, Trevor Lewis, because he's definitely getting up there as far as age is concerned. So I think for this free agent list, you're focused especially on the young core, the Grundstroms, the Byfields, Kaliev, Anderson, Dolan. Those are the ones that are going to be paying more, even though they're RFAs and normally the UFAs are the priority. I think Roy's replaceable. Arvidsson's replaceable. You got enough offense, I believe. You'll be able to find something else in the offseason. Then the goaltending, look, Copley and Talbot, the UFAs, and I think it's going to be very, very simple in that department. If one of them plays really well, they'll look to re-sign. If one of them doesn't play well, they won't be looking to re-sign. If both of them struggle, they might have look at a team that's going to have two different goaltenders next year. Keep in mind, too, with the Kings, it's still, I think, going to be a while in their pipeline until they have that next goalie of the future coming through the system. So it's definitely year-to-year goaltending. And, Copley and Talbot's performance this year is going to dictate just the interest level the Kings are going to have to re-sign after the end of the season.
I agree. LA, really? I know there's obviously news today with the Tampa Bay Lightning and Andrei Vasilevsky. But LA should give Carolina a call on either Anderson or Ranta, and Tampa should be giving Carolina a call, I think, or maybe even Anaheim. Maybe John Gibson. He want to go to LA, but maybe to Tampa Bay. But I do think um, these teams need to make improvement in the offseason. Taking a look at the possible lineup for the Kings, Ian's already said it. Mossy's already said it. The forward group is pretty good. I think that's the strength of this team. Like you guys said, down the middle, the wingers aren't too bad either, especially if they stay healthy. I think this team is going to score a lot of goals. I'll be looking at team total overs for the Kings. I'll be looking at player props for the Kings, but I'll also be looking at overs for the Kings because I think the goalies are going to give up goals. I think the defense um, still has question marks. It depends how the young guys do and how Doughty is he declining. We'll see what happens there, but really this lineup tells me overs and player props. will be what I'll be looking at for the Kings. Ian, possible lineup for the Kings. What do you think about their lineup here?
As good as center ice position in the NHL, there's no doubt. And I mentioned it, Kopitar, Dubois, Danault, Lizotte. That's as good as it gets. Very, very difficult for anyone to match that as far as depth goes. Do a couple of teams have maybe a better third line or fourth line? Maybe. But I'm talking about 1 through 4 collectively. It's very, very tough for any NHL team to top what the Kings have at the center ice position. I think for up front, they've got enough offense from Fiala, Dubois, Kopitar, Kempe. Byfield, to me, is the big, big question mark and wild card here. We're waiting on a Quinton Byfield to just have that burst onto the scene type of season. Can he be this year's Gabe Vilardi is what I'm going to ask of Quinton Byfield for the LA Kings. Can he do what Vilardi did last year? Because that's a lot of goals you replaced with Vilardi gone. Is Byfield ready to take that mantle? He's going to get every opportunity. He's going to get power play time. He's going to be on the top line. He's going to get the minutes. He's playing with 2 tremendous forwards in Kopitar and Kempe. This is the time that Quinton Byfield's got to take his game to that next level, see if he can do that and be a consistent offensive force for the LA Kings this season. I love their third line, a great defensive presence with Danault, who got his offense back a little bit last year after it disappeared that final year in Montreal. Arvidsson, like I say, good offensive player when he stays out there. Trevor Moore continues to make an impact and I think get better and more confident as time goes on. And like I say, even that fourth line, they're not going to be an easy line to play against. So up front, they're very, very solid. I think if they want to go from being a pretty good forward group to an amazing forward group and be right there with Edmonton and some of these other teams up front that they're going to be battling with, Byfield is the key. Byfield taking off this year is going to be the key to that. On the blue line, Anderson, Drew Doughty showed he's still got a lot of gas left in that tank. I love the addition at the trade deadline of Gavrikov from Columbus, a physical defensive presence, good shutdown player on the back end. You need that. Matt Roy's a capable defender in his own end. Bjornfoot, I think with more growth will continue to get better. And I love this kid, Brant Clark. I absolutely think the world of him already, and he's only 20 years old. He's going to be a dynamo offensively. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets power play time with this team, maybe right away early on, but certainly as the season goes on. He's going to start the year probably in the 5-6 defensive role, that third pair. But if he wows the coaching staff here, which he's got the potential to do, he could move up that defensive group as far as the depth is concerned over time if he impresses like I think he might be able to. It's looking all fine and dandy so far for LA, but that goaltending is the big, elephant in the room, if you will, right now. Phoenix Copley, outstanding season last year. Is he ready for a greater workload? Is he ready to be, probably a 1A, 1B is what we're going to see here with Copley and Talbot. I don't think there's going to be a bona fide number 1 goalie. I think there's going to be, it wouldn't surprise me if we get close to 40 starts, this season from both of those guys, Copley and Talbot, assuming they're both healthy. David Riddick, on the other hand, I think he's probably going to start the season with the AHL team. He'd be called up if there's an injury, but he's clearly the third wheel, if you will, as far as the goaltending behind Copley and Talbot. So that's the big question mark. We saw the Vegas Golden Knights show us a blueprint of having not a great goalie, not an elite goalie, and still being able to win the Stanley Cup. The LA Kings have a team that can do that. They just need Copley and Talbot to be solid, to be steady. And that's going to be something to watch this season. Can they be that? Can they just not give up those bad goals? Because if they don't give up those bad goals, it's a hell of a team in front of them.
For sure. Mossy, what do you think possible lineup for the LA Kings?
Yeah, this guy said it perfectly. That center lineup there, Kopitar, Dubois, Danault, Lizotte, you can't get much better than that. It's going to cause matchup problems with other teams. Fiala, Kaliev, Byfield, Kempe as the wingers on the first 2 lines. I like that too. Byfield last year, there's a lot of times where he's picking up sort of the third assist, if you will, where he's not getting any credit for it, but he's in on the play a lot. So I expect those points to probably jump up this year. Going to the defensemen, Doughty, Anderson, good first line. I think that with these defensemen, they're a little bit maybe underrated, if you will. Eye appeal, it doesn't really pop off to you, but if you watch the Kings, they're not too shabby. Doughty and Anderson as their first line. Gavrikov, he's a hard worker, good in his own end. Roy as well, good in his own end. Bjornfoot, Clark, I feel as well will probably jump up maybe in time to that second defense pair. Well, first in time, but maybe this year to the second defense pair. I believe he had 60 some points in 30 games last year with the Barrie Colts in the OHL. So, he's very offensive. And if the Kings want to add that, in their first two defenseman punch, I can see that happening. Goalies is the big question. Is Phoenix Copley or Cam Talbot going to get your team to the playoffs and potentially win a round? Their last time they won a round was conveniently enough when they won the Stanley Cup in 2014. I think if this team even gets through the first round, I don't think Kings fans are going to be satisfied. So I feel Cam Talbot might be able to steal the job come December. It depends. Copley played really good last year. I just personally have a ton of question marks around him. I would prefer Cam Talbot. He didn't play that great in Ottawa, but if he could get back to the numbers he had in Minnesota, I mean, that would be decent enough for the Kings. I see Terry shaking his head, but I mean, he had a 9-something save percentage. If he can get there, I mean, it's serviceable for them. But yeah, I feel their forward group is their key here to success. I mean, with their forwards getting contributing, getting points. Their defensemen too. Like I said, Doughty will chip in. He's not going to get a ton of goals. He's going to get a ton of assists though. Clark, you never know with him. Bjornfoot's a young guy. It's interesting. I'm not super stoked on them, but it's not. I don't think it's the worst forward and defense group in the league. Now, like I said, their goalies is the question mark, but I guess time will tell with that.
100%. Something you just mentioned, which I'm kind of surprised actually, is when you mentioned that the Kings haven't won a round since 2013.
14.
Everyone was giving Toronto heck. And lately now it's been towards my Minnesota Wild that everyone's been giving heck. But hey, the Kings haven't made it past the first round since 2014. So that's
And
really
some of
interesting.
those years too, Terry, they didn't even make the playoffs. So, it says kind of a lot if, they get the second round and get bounced out too. It's like, did they really do anything? So,
Yeah. And I do think Cam Talbot's best days are behind him. I don't see a return to grace for Cam Talbot, but that's just my thoughts. Looking at future bets here, point totals at 100.5. Kings had 104 last year, 99 the season before. So based on what we've seen, and with the fact that they do have a lot of young players that potentially could take that next step, the Kings could slightly improve from last year. I am just not ready to pull the trigger on it. I'm just not that high on this Kings team. Make the playoffs. I do think they make the playoffs, but it's minus 400. I'm not taking any of the four future bets: President's Trophy, Win Division, Conference, or Stanley Cup with the Kings. Fiala goals is an interesting one. He had 23 last year, which is kind of a surprise that he didn't have that he didn't get closer to 30 goals, but he only played 69 games. So if Fiala stays healthy with Pierre-Luc Dubois now beside him on the second line instead of Fiala, who was on the third line a lot last year, probably because of his defensive miscues, is why he was on the third line. But I think he can hit over 26.5 goals if he stays healthy. Kempe points is at 67.5. He had 67 last year. Uh, I think that goes over. I think he has a better season. He scored 41 goals, so he scored a lot of goals, but I think he improves even more with this Kings offense. Copley wins at 22.5. He had 24 last year, played 37 games. I'm not going to make a future bet on Kings goaltenders because we've discussed all show long about the question marks around the goaltender. So I don't have a future bet on Copley wins. Kopitar to win the Selke is very, very interesting. Plus 1,200. I definitely think he has an opportunity to win that. So that could be a good bet there. Who will have more points, LA or Pittsburgh? We discussed this on the Pittsburgh show. I do think that LA has more points than Pittsburgh, even though I'm not that high on LA, but I do think they have more points. I'm just not ready to lay minus 130. So no official bets for me, but if I was going to pull the trigger, it'd be Fiala over in goals and Kempe over in points. Mossy, future bets for the Kings. Does anything on this page catch your eye?
Yeah, I'll start total points 100.5. I think they had 104 last year. I can see them being around that 105 mark. I can see them reaching that. Do I have a bet necessarily on that at minus 115 to stick all season long? I'm not sure. Make playoffs. They're going to do that at minus 400. But I mean, they might slip into that third spot or the fourth wild card spot. Who knows, depending on how the Flames do. So do you want to lay minus 400 on that? I don't to sit all season long. President's Trophy, no, not for me. Win division, again, not for me. Win conference, not for me. And win Stanley Cup, not for me. I can't see none of that happening. Like I said, I have a hard time even being satisfied as a Kings fan personally if they get through the first round. I don't think Kings fans in general are going to be too high on this team, considering that's not really like a big step forward. Fiala goals, 26 and a half. He had 23 last year, which you touched on it, Terry. I'd imagine that number does get higher. He played 69 games last year. So if he can get a full season in, I imagine that does grow. So I don't mind that. Kempe points at 67 and a half. He had 67 last year. So like I said, I think Byfield too, with Byfield being the third, a lot of times getting the third assists on plays, if you will. If he chips in and a little more gets points, I think that does mean Kempe will get residuals off that. Copley wins. I'm not going to touch their goaltending, like you said. It's full of question marks. Do you even think Copley's going to get 22 and a half wins if Talbot starts taking this job? It's like, who really knows? And Kopitar win the Selke. It is very interesting with Bergeron now being retired. Kopitar could be the best two-way center in the league. So, I mean, that's something to look at. It's interesting. And who will have more points, Kings or Pittsburgh? I do think Kings get more points. Like I said, I think they finish in the 100 to 105 point range. But like the thing is with futures, I don't like laying minus 130 and minus 115 and have them sit all year long. I like getting some value off something like, even if it was, I see the thing is, if it was to be like, say, plus 110, it would have to lean that they're not going to get 105 points. But it's like, I'm not going to lay something minus 115 to sit all year when I can go make up those plays elsewhere. So we'll see. But I do like Fiala goals and Kopitar Selke, something to look at plus 1,200.
Yeah, and the futures aren't for everyone. I'll be honest, I don't bet a whole lot of futures, but looking when you're doing a future show, it's good to have that there for people that do like to bet a lot of future bets. Ian, I know you are a futures guy. What do you think here? Future bets for the Kings.
Yeah, to me, this is a team that I'd rather have the conference and the Stanley Cup futures. I think they're going to have a good regular season. Wouldn't shock me if they have just a good regular season, maybe not a great one. And then at playoff time, because they play the kind of style that, can really, really be successful at playoff time. Let's be real. They lost to Edmonton 2 years in a row. No shame in that. So this team to me is a team that could be one of those teams where maybe they're not going to win the Pacific. Maybe they're not going to be, one of the top even three teams, that are in the Western Conference playoffs. And maybe they even get in as a wild card, but they're dangerous. The LA Kings. That is how, because at playoff time, they play that kind of style that can be successful. No question about that. So I'm not involved in anything with futures other than maybe I'll look at the conference and the Stanley Cup. There are other future teams that I like as far as winning their conference and winning the Stanley Cup, but I certainly would look at something small at the very least on the conference at 11 and the Stanley Cup at 22-1. I definitely think Fiala over 26.5 goals can get there. I haven't prognosticated for close to 30, and you look at last year with the LA Kings, 23 goals for him in 69 games. So keep in mind, 23 goals, and he didn't play a full season. So you're only asking for 4 more goals. With Adrian Kempe's props, he probably could go over 67.5 points, but keep in mind, He had 67 last year, so he would have fallen half a point short of that 67.5 mark. But what I like more is because he's more of a goal scorer than a facilitator. I would look at the goals market for Kempe. And in fact, FanDuel's got him for 40 goals next year, 40 or more at plus 320. I thought that price was ludicrous on Adrian Kempe to score 40 at that number. He scored 41 last year. He's probably going to at the very least duplicate that. And I think he's got the potential to be like maybe even a 45, 46 goals. So 50 might be asking a lot, but 45, 46 definitely, and at least duplicating 41 that he had last year. All signs point to that he can do that. And especially when you know you're playing with Kopitar and Byfield, they're going to look for Kempe. They know Kempe is the goal scorer on that line. So to see Adrian Kempe priced at plus 320, to get 40 goals this year when he had 41 last year, and he might be as good, at least as good, if not better this year. I thought that price was just impossible to resist, impossible to pass up. So I really like that one quite a bit. As far as the other futures here, Kopitar to win the Selke, Mossy mentioned at 12-1. I wouldn't talk anyone out of that. He's certainly going to be the defensive conscience on this team up front like normal. And the Kings probably do finish ahead of Pittsburgh with more points at minus 1/3. Don't love the price enough to bet it, but I understand why they're favored in that market. So there you go with the Kings.
Awesome. Yeah, I used DraftKings for the future bets, and they did not have Kempe goals. So
I
that's
do
why
like
I
that
used
Kempe
Kempe points.
goals now that you mentioned it.
A plus
Yeah,
320, I
that's
do. Maybe if it's even money or a plus 150, I'm not interested, but plus 320, I'm interested.
that's a crazy price for what he did last year. Maybe they think the goals are going to be spread out a bit
That could
between
be
some
it,
other
but
guys, but
I don't know. To me, that's a top line player, and they're gonna. He is by far the goal scorer. With all due respect to Kopitar, who obviously has some offensive abilities, he is the goal scorer on that line. So to see, him being at plus 320 to score 40 or more goals. Actually, I see it's moved. I bet that a couple of days ago. It's plus 230 now at FanDuel.
oh
So it's
wow.
already starting. So I'm not the only one then that saw that plus 320 was just a little nuts to put that at prop.
Or there was a mistake. You
Yep.
got it on it good quick. But yeah, that is the LA Kings season preview show. Make sure to give Bossy and Ian a follow. As I said, their Twitter links, all of our Twitter links are on the screen and in the description below. Thank you everyone for watching. Almost done with all the 32 teams. So if there's any other teams you want to look at, they are all on the YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, guys.